Sometimes, right when the darkness feels absolute, life sends a light from the most unexpected place, and you never know where that light will come from. Sometimes it's a friend, sometimes a stranger, and sometimes it has four legs, no voice, but the loudest heart. The story we're about to tell you is exactly that kind of light. It's not just a rescue story, it's living proof of how loyalty, love, and invisible bonds can completely change a person's life. And maybe, just maybe, this isn't just a dog story. Maybe it's the story you need to hear today, because sometimes what saves us doesn't look like a hero at all. So let me ask you, have you met the buddy of your life yet? Let's find out together. That winter, Chicago wore a heavy gray blanket. The city felt muted. The streets were cold, the buildings quiet. People walked fast, heads down, scarves pulled tight, bracing against the wind. Steam from coffee shops danced under the dim glow of street lamps like ghostly silhouettes. For most, it was just another workday. But that morning, under a forgotten bridge, hidden beneath the shuffle of a city too busy to care, a tiny life trembled against the cold. A stray dog, fur matted, ribs visible, eyes dull and tired. Invisible in the rush of the city. No one heard the sound of his tiny paws tapping the pavement. No one even knew he was there. That same morning, just a few streets away, another lonely soul woke up. Jake Turner, 38 years old, a man who used to light up a room with his smile, a man who once had a wife, a job, a dream. But now, all that was left were empty walls and a silent apartment. Jake sat on the edge of his bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. The gray morning light cut through the blinds in thin stripes across the room. The dark circles under his eyes told a story he hadn't shared with anyone in a long time. He thought about those old Cubs games, how his dad used to cheer, how their laughter filled the room. About the chocolate cakes he baked with his mom, the laughter of old friends. All of it felt like it belonged to another life. Life had hit him hard. Cancer took his dad. A heart attack claimed his mom. He lost his job. And then, his wife left. Piece by piece, the world he knew disappeared. He'd tried therapy, tried meds, tried everything. But the darkness, it never left. That morning, there was only one thought running through his mind. It's time to end this. A thought he hadn't dared to say out loud, but one that had echoed in his head for weeks. No one will even notice. He brewed a cup of coffee. Even the coffee tasted hollow, like everything else in his life. He glanced one last time at an old photo on the wall. A young man smiling, full of dreams. A man he no longer recognized. He grabbed his coat, left his phone behind. No calls, no note. And without really thinking, his steps carried him to the place he had quietly decided would be the end. Michigan Avenue Bridge. He moved like a shadow through the morning crowd. Invisible. Just like the tiny life trembling under that bridge. He stopped at the edge, looked down at the frozen river below. The wind bit at his face. His fingers were numb. His thoughts empty. No one will even notice. That sentence echoed again. He was about to step forward when behind him a sound broke the silence. A bark, software, quiet, but real. At first he thought it was just the wind. But the sound came again. A little louder. He turned. In the shadows beneath the bridge, two eyes stared back at him. Tired, afraid, but not defeated. He squinted. It's just a dog, he thought. But those eyes. There was something there. Something he recognized. A look he'd seen in the mirror too many times. Jake hesitated. Then, without even realizing, took a step toward the bridge's edge. The closer he got, the clearer he saw. The dog's fur was filthy. Its ribs poked through its thin frame. One leg limped slightly. It was trembling. but it didn't run. Part of him wanted to walk away. "It's just a stray," the voice whispered. But another voice, one buried deep, whispered, "Don't look away." In that gaze, he didn't see a stray. He saw himself, the same exhaustion, the same surrender, the same loneliness. Jake knelt down, slowly reached out his hand, his voice barely a whisper. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The dog moved forward, sniffed Jake's fingers, and right there, in the middle of winter, under a forgotten bridge, an invisible thread tied two broken souls together. Jake's throat tightened. His eyes filled with tears. The cold, the noise, the city faded away. He scooped the dog into his arms. The warmth from its trembling body seeped into Jake's frozen heart. The dog leaned into his chest, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Jake whispered, "I've got you. I promise." What he didn't realize at that moment was that by saving this stray, he was also saving himself. This wasn't just a story about a man and a dog. This was a story about what happens when two lost souls find each other, and life, quietly, unexpectedly, begins again. Days turned into weeks. When Jake brought that trembling dog home from under the bridge that cold morning, he had no idea his life was about to change. At first he thought he was just saving another living creature. But what he didn't realize was that Buddy had already saved him. The first days weren't easy. Buddy jumped at every sound, flinched at every sudden movement, cowered in the corner whenever Jake raised his hand to grab something. It was clear the world hadn't been kind to him either. Jake didn't know how to help. He'd never lived with a dog before, but deep down, he understood that kind of fear. He'd been living with it himself. Every morning Jake got out of bed because of Buddy, not because he wanted to, but because there was now a fragile little life depending on him, waiting by the door, looking at him with eyes full of quiet, cautious hope. It started with small steps. He sat on the floor when he fed Buddy. He whispered, "Good morning," when he changed his water. He did things for Buddy that he couldn't bring himself to do for himself. The first time Buddy quietly walked over and rested his head on Jake's knee, Jake's eyes welled up. In that moment, he realized he wasn't alone anymore. That tiny heartbeat didn't just break the silence. It cracked something open inside him. Jake began taking Buddy on morning walks. At first, just for the dog. But over time, those walks became a routine for him too. On those gray Chicago mornings, with every step, he felt like he could breathe a little deeper. One day at the park, an old man nodded at Jake in passing. A simple, small gesture. A few months ago, Jake would have ignored it. But that day, he nodded back. Like maybe, just maybe, he could talk to people again. Buddy still startled at night, still paced by the door when shadows felt too heavy. The ghosts of his past still lingered, pacing the hallway like unwelcome shadows. On those nights, Jake sat quietly by his side and whispered, "No one's going to leave you. Not anymore. This is your home now." One morning, Jake caught Buddy staring out the window, his nose pressed against the glass, watching the falling snow. For the first time in a long time, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. That tiny, stray creature wasn't just living in Jake's apartment. He was slowly becoming the reason Jake got out of bed. One afternoon at the park, a little girl let go of her mother's hand and ran toward Buddy. Jake panicked, afraid of how Buddy would react, worried about the stray instincts that might still live inside him. But Buddy stopped, gently walked toward her, lowered his head, let the little girl pet him. And in that moment, Jake felt something he hadn't in years, a smile born from pure, quiet joy, the kind of smile he hadn't worn in years. From that day on, people in the park started recognizing them. Some would say, "Hey, that's Buddy's guy." Neighborhood kids ran to pet Buddy every morning. Jake, who once felt invisible, found himself saying hello to strangers again. The walls he'd built around himself started to crumble. Those small changes felt like nothing at first, but they were everything. Of course, it wasn't all easy. Some nights Jake still woke up from nightmares, of hospital rooms, of slammed doors, of the moment everything had fallen apart. But on those nights, Buddy would quietly walk over, rest his head on Jake's knee, and remind him he wasn't alone anymore. One morning, Jake caught himself scrolling through job listings over coffee. He hadn't done that in months, maybe years. Buddy lay beside him, his head resting on Jake's leg. Jake reached down, ran his fingers over Buddy's soft fur, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he took a step forward. He may not have realized it yet, but Buddy wasn't just a dog. He was the reason Jake was learning how to live again. This story wasn't about how a man saved a dog. It was about how a man, by choosing to save a dog, started saving himself. And this was just the beginning. That morning, a gray silence blanketed Chicago. The sky was heavy with lead-colored clouds, ready to spill snow at any moment. Thin sheets of ice still clung to street corners, and the sun seemed in no hurry to melt winter away. But for Jake, that morning felt different. As he got out of bed, there was something inside him he hadn't felt in a long time. A faint, quiet flutter, a desire to live. He sipped his coffee and gazed out the window. Buddy was sitting nearby, nose pressed to the glass, watching the snowflakes as they danced through the air. Jake smiled. Just months ago, he had no reason to get out of bed. Now, a four-legged loyal companion gave him one every single morning. He picked up the leash. "What do you say, Buddy? Time for the park?" Buddy's tail wagged. No further answer needed. The air was still cold, but the sun peeked through now and then, casting that soft, golden winter glow across the frozen ground. The grass was stiff. The trees were bare, but there was a faint scent of hope in the air. Buddy ran ahead and back, burying his nose into snow piles, occasionally glancing at Jake as if to say, "See? The world's still beautiful." Jake walked slowly, lost in thought. The past 2 years played like a movie in his mind. Those tired eyes under a bridge. That dark morning when he stood at the railing, wondering if it was all worth it. And now, here he was, walking through a small park with hope in his heart and a loyal dog by his side. Then, a scream. A child's voice, sharp, panicked. Jake turned his head. Near the edge of the pond, a young boy had lost his footing. He was slipping on the icy rocks, barely holding on. The pond was frozen, but not solid. One more misstep and he could fall through. The boy's mother was several feet away, dropping her phone and sprinting forward. But she was too far. Everything happened in seconds. Jake moved, but something else moved faster. Buddy. He yanked the leash from Jake's hand and bolted like an arrow toward the child. Jake's heart stopped. Time seemed to slow. Buddy's paws left clear prints in the snow. His eyes were locked in, determined, fearless. The boy wobbled on the edge of the ice, his feet unable to grip. He was seconds from falling in. Just in time, Buddy lunged forward, planting himself between the boy and the icy edge, steadying him with shaking paws. The boy stumbled, then found his footing. Buddy barked, loud, sharp, breaking the silence of the park. Jake snapped into motion, ran to them, and scooped the boy into his arms. It's okay, you're safe now," he murmured quietly. The boy trembled in fear. Moments later, the boy's mother arrived, breathless, tears in her eyes. "You saved my son. If you hadn't been here—" Jake couldn't speak. He simply nodded, then looked down at Buddy. Buddy stood firm, panting, his tongue out, but his head raised with quiet pride as if to say, "I was just doing my job." Police arrived. People had gathered. Some filmed it. A mother, a child, saved by a dog. Word spread quickly. News crews showed up at the park. Reporters camped out in front of Jake's building. Headlines appeared in the local press. Stray dog turned hero, saves child at park. A dog's loyalty changes a child's life. Jake sat next to Buddy during a local interview. He gently stroked his fur and said, "Yes, Buddy saved a child. But the truth is, he saved me long before that." His words went viral. A man, a dog, a child, and an unbreakable bond no one could see, but everyone could feel. But Jake knew the real miracle didn't happen in the park that day. It happened the moment a dog met a broken man under a bridge. That morning, Buddy didn't just save a life. He gave one. And for the first time, Jake said it out loud. As the sun broke through a sky of heavy snow clouds, Jake looked up and whispered, "Thank you, Buddy, for everything." 1 year later, Chicago was still gray. Winter once again wrapped the city in sharp cold. Snow fell slowly, blanketing the rooftops in white. But for Jake Turner, this winter felt different. Outside, it was still cold. But inside, something burned softly, steadily. Buddy was still by his side, energetic, joyful, full of life. Every morning, Buddy pressed his nose to Jake's bedside and made little noises to wake him up. Once upon a time, Jake had no reason to rise. Now he had one. Every single day. That morning, as he put on his coat, he caught his reflection. The man in the mirror wasn't the same. The emptiness in his eyes had lessened. His shoulders stood taller. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He walked with purpose now, keeping pace with a dog who believed in him. He was walking beside a dog who gave him rhythm again. A reason to say good morning to strangers. In the park, familiar faces greeted him. An old man waited each morning with a pocket full of dog treats. Children called out Buddy's name, eager to run with him. Jake had become a part of the neighborhood. Some still called him the man with the hero dog. One morning, a little girl tugged on her mother's coat and pointed at Jake. "Mom, why does that man always smile at his dog?" Her mother smiled. "Maybe. His dog reminds him what life feels like." Jake overheard. He took a deep breath. A soft smile formed on his lips. Yes, but he didn't just remind him of life, but he gave it back to him. Even a year after the rescue, strangers stopped to thank them. The press still called. Some wanted Buddy to get a medal, but Jake never cared for the spotlight. To Jake, true heroism wasn't found in headlines, but in a silent glance from a dog who had nothing, yet offered everything. It was in the eyes of a stray dog who looked up at a stranger under a bridge. At home, Jake kept a photo of that bridge. Next to it, a framed paw print. Every time he looked at it, he remembered. That day, he made a decision. He stood at the edge, ready to let go, but a pair of eyes stared up at him from the shadows, and they saved him. Jake had told the story more times than he could count, but every time, his voice softened at the same moment. To reporters, to neighbors, to followers online. But most of all, he told it to himself. And every time, he came to the same conclusion. Buddy didn't just save a child's life, he saved Jake's first. One afternoon at the park, an elderly man approached Jake. "I read your story," he said. "I lost my wife last year. I almost gave up, but your words gave me strength." Jake nodded, and in that moment he understood. Buddy hadn't just changed his life. Their story was changing others. A chain of hope had begun. One soul saves another, and together they light the way. That night, as Jake sat quietly at home, Buddy resting beside him, he whispered, "You saved me, Buddy, and not just me." Buddy closed his eyes. His tail gently wagged. The house was quiet, but for the first time, Jake found peace in that silence. Because life doesn't always rescue you in the way you expect. Sometimes it reaches for you quietly. Through a friend's hand on your shoulder, a smile from a stranger, or the light in a dog's eyes. Jake would sometimes stop during his walks in the park and look up at the sky, silently whispering a thank you. For that glance from beneath the bridge, for the courage of a creature who lit up the darkness of a man he didn't even know, and for the reminder that life can begin again when you least expect it. Because not every rescue story happens all at once. Some of them start with a single small step each morning, and sometimes the thing that keeps you going has 4 paws and no words. What about you? Has there ever been a moment when, just as you thought you were completely alone, a creature quietly reached out to save you? Tell us your story in the comments. And if you don't want to miss more true stories like this one, stories that remind us of the quiet power of love and loyalty, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes a story can save a life.